living in perhaps a more dangerous world than any
that's what
in Cold War. Demagogues, the greedy, the power hungry, the playing half bad and dangerous to know.
And that's just the Labour Party.
And yet, in all of this, it seems to be distracting from the one threat that looks at all of us, from the dictator, elected or otherwise, it was in this room, that's climate change. In Cambridge Prince of the Earth experience, the general concept of wars not climate change. But powerless, are relatively powerless, beyond ballot box and small personal changes and sacrifices to make the huge social infrastructure and economic changes required to ameliorate its effects. We are and have always been looking for leadership on this. Leadership which has so often been on the scale and to monitor.
Thumbs down there. So what do we do?
Someone saying yes.
And debates. What are your plans? So firstly, Cambridge, and then the country as a whole, contribution to halting climate change. We're all looking to you. What are your plans? Having said that, I'd just like to make a couple of points. I'd like to remind everyone that it's actually a climate change hustings. There are many other issues we would like to put with the candidates, myself included. But other hustings are available. You'll have your chance to put those to them at a later date. This is for questions about climate change only, please. Thank you. And so it's been a bit of an eye-opener to us organising this hustings in terms of the organisation required and indeed the cost. So as a result, we have some donation table outside, both for this hustings and for another one that Friends of the Cam are organising in a similar vein, though that will be mostly focused on the River Cam and water resources. Okay, thank you. I'd like to introduce the chair. Leah.
Thank you.
A distinguished academic. Yes.
Thanks very much. Do we have great, perfect. So I'm Leah Gray, professor of geography at the university. I'm not a climate scientist, but we make things care. So what I do is what I'd like to do is kind of for tonight. Well, we don't have that much time, we have an hour and a half, and we'd like to get into as many questions as possible. So what we'll do, we're going to ask you all to be very succinct in your questions. I have some questions that we ask people who have questions to kind of put questions in ahead of time. I have some of those, but we also want to make space for everyone here to ask questions as well. But that means both our candidates and our audience members and things. So I'd also like to ask everyone to be the listeners, not to interrupt, the listening respectfully, and you know, I was talking to a colleague tonight at my department from Switzerland, and he was so amazed that the UK has such a form of direct democratic participatory kind of events. We didn't even realize we had it. And thought to himself, yes, and it is fabulous. So, but to make it all work, we'll all have to be quite succinct. So, without further ado, I'd like to ask our panel members, all our candidates, to introduce themselves quite quickly within a minute each.
The main issue is the loudness from the panel.
Can you hear me? Excellent. So my name is Dr. Khaled Abutayeb. I'm oncologist by training. I worked for around, I'm still working. Actually, I finished my chemotherapy clinics and came down here. I received the Grants Award and was trying to the NHS as well. I'm a political advisor for many years for media companies and politicians. I'm trying here to improve our NHS, trying to improve our city and our education. My mom is a teacher, my dad is a teacher, and for many years we thought education is basic change for better cities and for peace, of course. So I'm here as well to talk about climate changes. We are really facing disaster. We are facing pollution. We're facing a serious problem. If we don't act now, then when? I think everyone here suffered from the pollution. The climate change is getting worse and worse, and the sea level as well is getting higher and higher. If we don't act now, then when? I got some pictures here. I'm going to show you later. We'll be short. So we have to act, and I cannot act without your help. So we have all to act and to vote for the right person we think is going to help the city, because we are talking about Cambridge. If we don't do anything now, more trouble we are going to face. There's a newspaper talking about high levels of equality here. Now I ask questions to drink a little now fluid a day, but now I ask them to boil it for drinking. Why? So we have to provide them with water. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And all the best for the city and for the citizens.
Thank you, Professor Gray. And can I just start by first thanking Friends of the Earth Cambridge for organising tonight's hustings on what's an incredibly important topic, and also all the volunteers that are making this happen. That you won't see them necessarily, but it takes a lot of people to make tonight work. My name's Shane Manning, and I'm the Conservative Party parliamentary candidate for Cambridge. Now, the reason why I'm standing to hopefully be your next MP is because I want to provide a genuine alternative to the people of Cambridge, to what they've had over recent years. Now, I know what you're thinking. You'll say, Shane, your party have been in government for a long time. How can you be the alternative? However, I think we all know in Cambridge, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats have had a vice-like grip over Cambridge for a while and have dominated the city council for over 30 years now. And when I've spoken to hundreds of people all over the city, many of them tell me that they don't think those two parties are listening anymore. They don't think their views, their priorities are considered in decision-making. And frankly, they think their votes are being taken for granted. I want to give a voice to those people. I want those people to have a genuine and viable alternative. And if I'm lucky enough to be elected as your MP, I will propose practical, sensible, and pragmatic solutions to some of the problems that our city faces, whether that's congestion on our roads, whether it's transport infrastructure, topics I'm sure we'll cover this evening, rather than what it seems to be ideologically driven pet projects, which ultimately only harm hardworking families. And the reason I've got involved in politics in the first place is to give a voice to hardworking families and do everything I can to support them. Thank you.
We might have a water crisis right here if I knock the jug over, so I'll just come around this side. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. It's wonderful to see so many people, and it's really lovely to be here. And my name's Cheney Payne. I'm the Liberal Democrat parliamentary candidate here in Cambridge. I was elected first in 2018 as a city councillor for Castle Ward, so just up and along Huntingdon Road. But I think for me, one of my key drivers for moving into politics is because I have been for the last 15 years and still am a secondary school teacher. And for me, over that last 15 years, the education, the knowledge and the skills we need to share with our young people to equip them for the wider world and for a future in 10 years' time, where the grips of climate change will be undeniable, are so vastly different to that which many of us here would have known while we were at school. One of the nicest jobs I do at that vein at school is I run a student eco committee. And we had a little activity last week where we sat and we worked out the food miles of their packed lunches when we're talking about carbon footprint. And as the conversation drifted, I overheard a little 12-year-old called Edward sigh and then say, outraged, oh God, I'm going to have to ask my mum to stop buying Nutella because look at all these food miles. And I just wonder, for children like poor little Edward, how many more of those conversations is he going to need to have? How many more times is he going to have to make changes to how he moves, how he heats his home, where he gets his food from? Our young people, and we here, should not need to be the leaders in tackling climate change. We've been failed repeatedly by an out-of-touch, out-of-ideas government. For the Labour Party, they will talk to you tonight about how this election is about getting the Conservatives out and getting Keir Starmer in. For the Liberal Democrats, it's about so much more than that. We want to transform the very nature of British politics so we can fix the health and care crisis, put our economy back on track, and end the appalling sewage scandal we're facing in our rivers. That's why I'm standing to be your next Liberal Democrat MP for Cambridge, because I think we need a fresh voice in fighting for the fair deal we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. And first of all, I'm Daniel Zeichner. I've been your MP for the last 9 years. Can I echo the thanks to the people who set this event up today? It is really complicated and difficult, especially in the modern world, sadly. Look, the reason I want to be re-elected, and I ask for your support again, is because over the last 9 years, I've seen up front in Parliament just what it's like being in opposition and watching a Conservative government basically preside over chaos over year after year after year. And that's had a really bad effect on people, not just in Cambridge, but right across the country. And in terms of the climate and nature crises, frankly, it has been very, very poor. I've been a Shadow Environment Minister for the last 4 years, so I've been involved closely in some of the legislation. There are very expert people in this room tonight, so we'll come on to some of the details of that. But I suppose it has really brought home to me that just winning a seat here isn't enough. I desperately want to change a government because the world cannot wait much longer for action. And this current government is completely out of space, out of ideas. And I tell you, we've got some cracking ideas to really, really meet this challenge. And I really look forward to exploring them with you over the next hour and a half. So that's me. And thank you very much, not just for tonight, but for support people who've shown me over the last decade. I've hugely appreciated the advice that many people in this room have given.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming here tonight to actively participate in local democracy. And thank you very much to the organisers of this event. I'm going to keep mine short and sweet because I was told I only had a minute. Okay, I'll stand up. So I'm Sarah McManus, and I've been an active and proud member of the Cambridge Green Party, Cambridge and South Cambridge Green Party for almost 10 years. Cambridge has passed the point of sustainable growth. Developers can no longer demonstrate water neutrality for their growth projects or for Cambridge's growth projects. And the Environment Agency is now frequently having to step in. Due to a rapidly changing climate, Cambridge is likely to be flanked by water as early as the next decade. If we are to live in a livable future, we need to act with extreme urgency. Green MPs will push the next government to stop all fossil fuel extraction projects, cancel any recently issued fossil fuel licenses, and press for significant investment in the green economic transformation. The cost of inaction will far outweigh the cost of climate action. This is an emergency. We do not have long to act. The only party offering hope and courage, and only the Green Party are offering real hope and real change. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Carmona. I'm the independent candidate here, the junior member of this panel. I believe that there are big issues facing us, and one of the big issues is the environment. My particular take on this is we can fix a lot of the issues we're facing if we fix our society, our way of looking at living, our way of looking at each other, prioritizing people over things, volunteering more to help our neighbors, realizing that the people around us are the best guarantee of our security and well-being. With that first building block, all other issues can fall into place. That is my belief, and my platform is based upon that. Thank you for coming.
Wonderful. Thank you all. So I'd like to start tonight's proceedings by asking a question of the audience, and that is, how many people are already decided who they're going to vote for? Can you raise your hands just so we have a sense of, gosh, okay, so there's many undecided voters out there. That's very interesting. Thank you. We are going to start with a question for all the candidates that was the tabled question, and that is, can a new government halt the climate and environmental crises? And Sarah, we'd like you to start us off, if you would, please.
Suppose that's appropriate. So a new government must make the climate and environmental crisis its top priority. If it does not do so, as pointed out by over 400 scientists in their open letter yesterday, it will place the prosperity and well-being of the British people at severe risk. 3/4 of the British adult population is worried about climate change, a concern I have picked up strongly from the doorstep when I'm out canvassing. It's incredibly disappointing, not to say astonishing, that the other parties are paying so little attention to this fundamental threat to our future. The one thing the public can rely on is Green MPs pushing for real action on the climate and the environment to give everyone the real hope and the real change that is so desperately needed. We need to, firstly, stop all fossil fuel extraction projects, cancel recently issued fossil fuel licenses, and focus clearly on the actions needed to halt carbon emissions. Secondly, press for significant investment in a green economic transformation, which will be good not only for the environment, but also for the economy. And thirdly, urgently accelerate action to help ensure adaptation to climate change. Recent weather events and disasters have shown that climate change is happening now. I'm sure a lot of you have been caught in the deluge of rain recently. It's only just stopped this evening. And we know that these are going to have significant negative consequences. The climate and environmental crisis is global and cannot be halted by one country alone. Our new government must aim to lead by example, demonstrating that a just and fair transition is possible and ensuring that the necessary finance is generated by the wealthy for those who will struggle most to mitigate and adapt to the impending changes. Only the Green Party offers real hope and real change, I'm repeating myself now, for halting the climate and environmental crisis. If you go away with one message tonight, go away with that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. First of all, for the Workers' Party, Great Britain, we are really focusing on the environment. Mainly me as oncologist, I can see the global warming and the pollution really affecting our patients, and more cancer we can see nowadays than before. I'm now struggling with the number of patients coming to my clinic because of the what's happening around. So now what we need to do, we need to divert lots of these billions going abroad to sponsor wars and the NATO to here inside the country. We are really facing disaster. I agree completely about the fossil fuel, that we have to stop this crazy pollution program for digging here and there for the fossil fuel. I'm anti-fossil fuel from beginning. Number two, we need to stand for our global warming. You can see here, this is the land projected to be below annual flood level in 2050. We are sinking, basically. We can see my garden here in Cambridge is more muddy. It's not just because of the long wet winter. It's also because of the sea level going up and up because of pollution. If you do nothing and we keep funding the NATO, we are going to be in trouble. Yes, the city planning for another 150,000 new house by 2050, but where? In the mud? A few months ago, I was trying to go to my hospital, Norwich Hospital, and I stuck in the traffic 4 hours to reach my hospital. Because of what? Because of small flood. What about next year and the year after and the year after? We have to act now. We have to stop talking about, oh, we are struggling with the budget. There is a big budget there. We have to divert this budget to feed our poor kids. There's 4.3 million children in poverty. There is a disaster here we are facing. There's more cancer. We are facing pollution all over our city. So I spoke with one of COP28 members about the future of UK, not UAE, because the COP28 was back in December in UAE. I told him, one of the Sultan Al Jaber friends, I told him, what do you think about UK? He said, guys, you're in trouble. You have to act now. This is the reason why I'm standing for our city, for our country. Enough is enough. Just promises, promises. And we are talking about, oh, we are doing well, we are doing well. We are doing more pollution. We have to clean the city. I will leave these pictures behind me. This is not, it's the city is sinking with rubbish. This morning, this is not the ideal. This is Addington Road. You can watch it. You can go there and have a look to see how much rubbish there. The city full of weed, the city full of dirt. We need our river become more polluted. Our patients needs clean water as well. Thank you, Mia. But please, we have to act now. Thank you.
There's a simple answer to the question. We've absolutely must tackle the crisis. We absolutely must. The big question is, can we? And I suspect virtually everyone in this room thinks this is really important. The problem is we've got to convince lots of our fellow citizens. And that, I'm afraid, is not as easy as it sometimes seems. And when we look at the results of the European elections over the last few days, it's not particularly uplifting, because it seems that right across Europe, people are turning away from this issue when it absolutely they should be coming to it. So if you ask me, will we be able to do it? My commitment is absolute to trying to make it happen, but do not underestimate how hard this is, and also how much time has been lost in the last decade, frankly. There was a period when it looked as if, I'm not going to say anything too positive about Boris Johnson, but on climate issues, he was beginning to come in the right direction. Frankly, Rishi Sunak has turned back. We've got to move forward. Now, look, there's a lot could be said. I'll keep it brief. Two big things, though, or one big thing and a smaller thing. The Labour's plans for Great British Energy are transformational. It is a huge, huge ambition to decarbonize our power sector by 2030. So much follows from it, because if you want to tackle those emissions coming from transport, of course we've got to electrify, but you've got to have the power to do it. And at the moment, the problem is a real market failure, frankly. The number of projects I come across in my brief where people are saying, we've got all these great ideas, but we cannot connect to the grid. It's absolutely stuck. It's a huge bottleneck, and it's not been resolved. Great British Energy can be part of that. It is astonishing that there are so many nationalized companies around and about us doing offshore wind and so on, but not our countries. It's other countries, because this government has got an ideological obsession against state intervention. We need it here. We absolutely need it here. I won't say any more about this for a minute, but just one final thing. If I'm becoming the environment minister, I will have the opportunity to make a real change in terms of the nature crisis. Every year at the moment, the neonicotinoid pesticides are given approval by this government. If I'm the minister in a few months' time, that will finish an end to the bee-killing pesticides that are doing so much harm to nature.
Thank you. So the question was, can a new government halt the climate and environmental crisis? I don't know if the person who controls the Friends of the Earth national Twitter is in the room, so I suppose it is possible. But if you are here, thank you so much for the lovely comments about the Lib Dem manifesto when it launched this week. In fact, made Sir Ed Davey so happy, he disappeared off to Thorpe Park to celebrate for the day. So if you want to see a party leader do an interview about the manifesto on the teacups, it's on YouTube right now. I think in reality, though, even if you did enact every detail of that manifesto to the utmost degree, in reality, my answer would have to be that, sure, it could, but I think no government can halt the crisis alone, and no government can do it as part of a two-party state. And that's because the change we need to see is so radical, and it has to be systematic. Now, we here are all absolutely on board with that, but we know that some of the lifestyle changes that we'll need to ask people to make are simply not crowd-pleasing. under first past the post, I just can't see the Tories, excuse me, who chose to launch their manifesto for building roads at Silverstone, of all places, today, or indeed Labour, who are openly treading that tightrope to get into power, taking that risk. Now, I'm incredibly proud of the Liberal Democrat manifesto, which will be, according to Friends of the Earth on Twitter, so it must be true, a tough act for Labour and the Conservatives follow. We propose to invest so that 90% of our energy will come from renewables by 2030 and to create a home energy upgrade programme to offer free insulation and heat pumps to people in low income households, which could make a really fundamental difference for household in Cambridge. I can guarantee to you, however, that people will be objecting to those solar panels and all that ugly insulation at a Cambridge Planning Committee for years to come. And under first past the post, few governments are likely to take the bold steps needed because the electoral benefits are just too far away. To tackle the climate crisis, we first have to sort out the democratic crisis with a proportionally representative system of government. Secondly, and finally, no government can do this alone. And since we shot ourselves in the foot with Brexit, the UK has had very little influence on the world stage. The Liberal Democrats are the only party committed to a closer relationship with Europe so that we can work with our partners to put tackling climate change at the absolute forefront of our international development efforts. So to answer the question posed for us, I think yes, it can, but probably not a Labour or Conservative one. Thank you.
Before I read out my reply, I'd like to put the question to the members of the audience. How many of you believe that the British government can solve the climate crisis? Hands up if you believe it. Anyone, any British government, don't worry about the color of it. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so the vast majority of you don't believe it. And the same goes for me. I don't believe it. And the reason is that it's beyond our power to stop the climate crisis here in the UK. Okay, we cannot force the rest of the world to do something just because we want them to do something. In fact, the UK government, the UK establishment, does not seem to want to halt the climate crisis at all. We are members of the WTO, GATT, and we've relocated most of our consumer industries to other countries in the Far East, etc. This actually increases global emissions because the products are manufactured in countries which mostly use coal as their energy, and they mostly import their raw materials. And once they've produced the goods that are destined for our consumers, these have to be carried all the way across the world to us. So this causes further damage to the environment. Climate change is a worldwide crisis. Stopping it is wishful thinking. We cannot dictate what happens worldwide. We've got 65 million people in this country. China and India have each more than 20 times as many people. Yeah? Does anyone here think that we can tell China, India, Brazil, Africa what to do and what not to do? They're just going to do whatever they want to do. Do I have a bit more time? So these countries and others like them want modern standards of living and consumerism like us. What can we do? We can forget about bombastic claims of changing the world climate crisis and focus on improving our environment. So I'll be very brief. Our environment will improve our lives. We want to live in a green and pleasant land, not wallow around in a festering garbage dump with poisoned air and polluted water. Any steps a future government takes should aim to improve our environment, our backyard, Great Britain. Let's convince people to consume less, reuse more, and respect the wonderful land they live in. And if we want to do our bit towards solving the global climate crisis, let's start by repatriating our industries here to this country, train a new generation of workers, pay them properly, and build clean energy schemes to power the lot at home. This is something we can change, something we can do, and who knows, it might even be an example for others to follow.
Sure. So the question was, can the next government halt the climate crisis? And I think the short answer, sadly, is no. No one government can solve the climate crisis. And I think it would be arrogant of us to think that an issue as massive as climate change could be solved by one government or indeed one nation. I think we can all acknowledge it's an issue of global significance and therefore needs to have a global response, with multiple governments, multiple nations working together with private enterprise to come up with solutions. And it's why I am proud of the record that this Conservative government and indeed previous Conservative governments have on that. When we look at what we're doing at home, we're the first G20 country to actually have our carbon emissions while still growing our economy. Now, of course, loads more needs to be done, but we need to acknowledge that is a big achievement. But on the global stage, as I said, is probably more important. We have been a leader in this space. If you look at the Paris Climate Accords, we were integral in getting that commitment to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees. When we hosted our own COP just a couple of years ago, and even Mr. Zeichner mentioned Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister, was key in ensuring that many nations that wished to renege on that commitment didn't do so. And since 2019, this government have invested over £11 billion into international climate change projects. And we've been encouraging our international partners and some of the biggest polluters that they need to do more, that we need to take this more seriously. We need to reverse deforestation. We need to protect our natural environment. And we need to accelerate the global transition towards green and renewable energy. Now, one government can't do this, as I said, but multiple governments together can. And this Conservative government have a strong record over the last 14 years of doing that. We have a proven track record of delivering. We do. You might not like it, but we do. And ultimately, you have to judge it on delivery. We have done it over the last 14 years. And if we were to be elected again, we would continue to treat it as a top priority.
Great. Thank you all very much for answering the kind of overarching question that we had tonight. What I'd like to do is take a question from the audience. If there are questions, could I have the woman with the red orange top there? Yes. Could you introduce yourself, please, and ask your question in a succinct way?
Okay, this is live then, great. So I'm Hermione Crease. I work in Cambridge. I work in the green tech sector, I guess. Simple question. For most people in this room, I guess, even beyond their transport costs, the use of energy to heat our homes is going to be their major contribution to climate change. So it's critical that we reduce the carbon burden of home heating. I'd like to know what the panel think are the biggest barriers to accomplishing that, and what sort of policies you might enact to address those barriers.
Thank you. Jenny, would you like to start us off?
Sorry. I was worried about the water, not so much the technology. Thank you so much for your question, Hermione. I think it's a really pertinent one. I think I touched on earlier how, particularly in Cambridge, one of the most fundamental things we could do is around our housing. A vast majority of our housing in Cambridge is not modern. And if we look at the housing of some of the most vulnerable people who are most affected by those high bills, which is our council housing, a large proportion of that is quite old and actually isn't particularly suitable to be retrofitted. But retrofit has to be the answer. It's complicated currently, and something the Liberal Democrats have been asking for within the City Council for many years is how the council can work to support that process. And fundamentally, we have to make it quicker and we have to make it cheaper. And as we all know from any works you've had done in your own home, it is much cheaper to put the scaffolding up once, isn't it? If you can do the whole street, you and your neighbours can do it together, it's quicker and it's cheaper for everywhere. So on a city level, we've been campaigning locally for schemes from the council to help support that. So to offer grants, for instance, for a street to get together and do that collaboratively, because then it's just easier in terms of resources and makes a fundamental difference. I'm also very proud that something the Liberal Democrats brought forward in the City Council was grey water recycling within all new council homes. So the council has a rapid council house building project, but now, as of about 3 years ago, due to one of my colleagues, all of those new households will need to be fitted with grey water recycling, which will help to reduce the water bills and conserve our precious water. Nationally, retrofit is a huge challenge as well, which is why one of my kind of key items from the Liberal Democrat manifesto is exactly around retrofit. So the Liberal Democrats would create a home energy programme, and this would look to combine social justice, which is the aspect of affordability and reducing the bills, with climate justice, which is the carbon emissions. And so we'd look to introduce a home retrofit programme so that people on the lowest incomes will be offered grants to upgrade their homes for free to achieve both of those objectives of being a fairer, more equal society, but also one that does less damage to the environment.
So the Green Party would follow the Green New Deal for housing. So we would empower local authorities to first of all, bring empty homes back into use, and create a total of 150,000 new homes for social rent. And we would build those to passive house or equivalent. So this standard will see these new homes use 90% less energy for space heating than the average home, significantly reducing household bills. We would improve the insulation of every UK home that needs more insulation by 2030. The material for these insulation improvements will be sustainable, significantly reduce heating bills as well by improving 1 million existing homes and other buildings every year so that they reach the highest standard of energy efficiency. Homes lived in by people on low incomes will be the first to receive these major improvements and benefit from reduced heating bills. This will be a deep retrofitting of 10 million homes by 2030 on top of the insulation improvements every home that needs it will receive. So other parties as well can adopt the Green New Deal. It's not just the Green Party. Insulate non-domestic buildings, addressing large amounts of energy loss from offices and public buildings, and transform the planning system so that new buildings built by private developers are built to the passive house. So yeah, the biggest barrier, of course, is investment into renewable energy for making homes more sustainable. So that's why we would see a massive investment. We would push the government for a massive investment in green ecological technologies. Thank you.
Thank you. You won't be surprised. I'll go back to my opening observations about the importance of Great British Energy and decarbonising the power sector by 2030, which is an absolutely massive ambition. And that will enable people not only to have lower carbon energy to heat their homes, but will also, in fact, probably produce lower bills, almost certainly produce lower bills, because the way at the moment we're tied into the extraordinary international energy pricing system. It became very, very obvious during the crisis caused by Putin a couple of years ago that the way the energy system pricing works was locking us in to very high costs of the gas system at a time when we actually have renewables here. What is, of course, most disappointing is that the Conservative government's obsession with no onshore wind has cost us all very, very dear. Again, a lost decade, which we will turn around immediately. There are so many things that can be done, offshore floating wind. The technologies are there to allow this transformation to happen. I think it just requires the political ambition to do it. Alongside that, of course, stop wasting energy, which means insulating our homes. And again, it is just heartbreaking to look at what happened after 2010. I remember before I was elected, long before I was elected here, working with people locally on the home insulation schemes, which were working before 2010. I remember challenging Boris Johnson at Prime Minister's questions on this. Why are so few home insulation schemes working now? No answer did there come. We can do it again. So there's lots and lots that can be done. But finally, stop allowing houses to be built at lower building standards. Again, why were the building standards lowered in 2010? Well, you can change it again, but what the tragedy is, we've seen so many houses built around Cambridge, which could have been built to higher standards, which weren't. So retrofitting, yes, but we should never have been in that position in the first place.
Thank you. So the question, to remind ourselves, what were the biggest barriers stopping us doing more on this? And I think, frankly, it's the cost and practicalities of getting the average person to do it. I think most reasonable people, when you speak to them, acknowledge this is a massive problem, and most people want to do every little bit they can to help. But it's not as easy for everybody to invest in a new heat pump, to spend £10,000 in a boiler, to change to an electric car as much as they might want to. So the issue is trying to reduce the cost of moving to these new technologies, these new ways of living. And this is why Rishi Sunak has been quite clear on maintaining the fact that net zero is a stonewall commitment, but we have to do it in a proportionate and pragmatic way for working people. So the focus of this government has been bringing in investment. Since 2010, we've had over £300 billion worth of investment come in towards clean energy projects. Ultimately, this is going to bring the cost of things like electric cars down, the cost of heat pumps down, and eventually it's going to be affordable for people. And I'm convinced people will bite your hand off if they can afford it. It's not a lack of want, it's a lack of means. And as I say, this government are making progress on that. And we're seeing it already with the cost of things like electric cars already coming down from where they were 5 or 10 years ago. But like I say, investment is key. It's making it practical for people. It's helping to develop the new technology of the future, which is going to help us get to where we want to be by 2050. But it's also making sure that climate change is at the heart of planning, as has been mentioned so far, and any new initiative that any private enterprise does. So I've been a councillor in the past where I live, and I was part of shaping the new neighbourhood plan in our area. And I created the climate change section, which basically said every new development in our area needed to take into account climate change and not add to our emissions with every new development. And straight away, the businesses got that message, knew what we were trying to achieve, and designed with that in mind. So just to wrap up, the main challenges are cost and practicality for people. And as much as we all want to get there, we have to acknowledge it's not as easy for everybody to pay the sums that are required for some of the technologies we're talking about.
Thank you very much, Mia. Thank you. Now, Cambridge is a very unique city, very smart people living here. So what I would like to say, climate changes is like cancer. As well, housing and heating for houses is like it going up and up. Now, if we are talking about plan of 2030, 2050, this long time, it's like cancer. If you leave it longer, more damage to the climate, more damage to the people. So we have to act now. For me, I tell the patients, to be honest, all of the time, if you leave your cancer longer without treatment, it's going to kill you. We are facing similar situation here. If we leave the problem 2030, 2050, we are going to have more trouble, more problems. Our people struggling to feed their kids, our people struggling to even pay the transport to their work. How we can ask them to change or improve the isolation in their house. We have to act. When we say, oh, how we can do it? Yes, we can do it. We have to divert the money for better isolation. We have to divert the money to protect our people, to feed our people, to improve their housing. There's 100,000 people waiting for housing here in the country. How we can ask them, oh, can you change the heating type or the isolation type? They don't have house. They don't have food for their kids. I was watching my patients and my nursing team, doctors suffering. The highest suicide among doctors. Why? Because they got money for isolation. No, this is the reason why we need to divert the money from the start, from here and there, to improve our city. Let's start with the city. But if we are talking about the country in total, if we are talking about UK, and we are not even managed to solve the problem here in Cambridge, Cambridge suffering. How 10 years of suffering is getting, this is next to the Cambridge Council, is dirty, is destroyed. We need 5 years just to build the city itself. What about the nation? What about our country? What we need to do here, we have to act now. As you said, bless you, you said we need new faces to change, to act for the people now, not tomorrow or next year or 2030, 2050. It's not good. Thank you.
I don't believe in taking measures that destroy the whole country in order to solve a problem. I also believe that we can do things in a sensible way. We need to reduce people's bills, heating bills. We need to reduce the emissions. So the best way is insulation, retrofitting of homes, right, where possible. I don't see what else can be done to answer your question. Insulation and pray for mild winters, which ironically, global warming is going to bring us, right? So in a way, yeah, that's it.
Can I go back to you for a minute? Do you feel people have responded to your question?
Yes, I cheated. I asked a question about which I know quite a bit. I would say it's quite correct to say actually that the Conservatives have been reasonably helpful and supportive of insulation and retrofit in the public sector, in public housing. It's also quite correct to say that they have discontinued a range of public support in a way, a stop-start way that has been very destructive to the supply chain in retrofit. So Daniel's point on that is completely correct. I am satisfied that with the range of policies that have been put out in front, I think there's an awful lot of practical detail that is you haven't got time to go into this evening, but yeah, most people seem to get it.
Thank you. So we had one question that I wanted to take from some of the questions that were put up earlier from Sarah Hughes. Is Sarah Hughes in the audience? Sarah, you asked a question about transport. Would you like to ask it to the audience now? I mean,
Thank you. So I'm asking my question on behalf of the Cambridgeshire Sustainable Travel Alliance. We're an alliance of 31 organisations active in the areas of transport, environment and health. Transport accounts for a significant proportion of our region's carbon emissions, around 20% in Cambridge City and over 40% in the wider Cambridgeshire and Peterborough combined authority area. Surveys show that people want to drive less and use sustainable transport more, but often have to use a car because other options aren't available. If elected, what would you and your party do to give people the choice to opt for low carbon forms of transport?
thank you. So a question on how we can encourage people to be driving less, to take on low carbon forms of transport. David, would you like to start us off, please?
So this is a big issue, isn't it? Because especially in the countryside, the density of public transport is so low that you don't really have a choice but to drive. If you need to go anywhere, the distances are usually quite long. In town, it's a bit easier, especially in a small town like Cambridge. We can use our bicycles or walk if we are able-bodied. But there again, there's people who need the car to get about. There's a new technology coming out, which is the electric car. It's been around for a few years. It's still not, it's still not 100% sure what the saving in carbon is going to be between an electric car and a normal car, a petrol car, because there's the life cycle, there's the production. I don't know the exact figures. Basically, we're going to perhaps gradually solve this problem. More electric cars, better made, better ways of manufacturing them, a bit more transport, perhaps converting more buses to electricity. A big thing would be to convert more rail to electric from diesel. And yeah, that could solve it partly.
Thank you. Shane, would you like to go next?
Of course, thank you. So the Conservative position on this is we need to have a combination of both short, medium and long-term solutions to this. Acknowledge the council are looking at having more bus options, which I think is not a bad idea, but we need to be more strategic and more long-term. And the Conservative position on this is we need to explore a light rail, so a kind of tram network through Cambridge. It works in many cities across the world. Its research shows that it's the best way to make a modal shift, so to move people away from their cars, because it is a genuine way of getting around the city sustainably and cheaply as well. We have to acknowledge people need their cars, and it's been mentioned already. 60% of low-income families have a car and need a car to get around. And it's a way to help those with social mobility to get to where they need to be and do what they need to do. Whether it's a family and a parent needing to drop their kid off at school and then drive to work, a bus isn't going to be the answer. Whether it's an elderly person who sees their car as their means of freedom and liberation, a bus isn't going to cut it. But we, like I say, we need to be more strategic and look at something more revolutionary. Yes, more expensive. Yes, it's going to take longer. But as we've all acknowledged, this isn't a small issue that's going to go away in a couple of years. We need to think big. And with the population of Cambridge just increasing, we need to think of something more longer term. So I acknowledge that the bus route being a good one. I think over 10 years ago, it came up as the go-to solution. And that was on the prediction that Cambridge's population would be 147,000 by 2031. Friends, we hit that number in 2021, and the population is only going to grow. So yes, buses are fine, but they're not free from pollution either. Whereas it's proven in all the cities where light rail has been used that it lowers emissions, it lowers the cost for consumers, and it's something that a city like Cambridge should be embracing. So if I was elected as your MP, I'd be advocating strongly for both short-term solutions which we can achieve now, because I acknowledge the problem exists today, but we also need to think long-term. We need to think strategically about what the future of Cambridge looks like. And to me, for transport, that's a light rail network.
Okay, transport in 2 minutes. It's been a touch controversial, this subject in Cambridge, hasn't it, over the last couple of years? So we know how difficult it is. Look, first of all, obviously Cambridge is a national leader in terms of cycling and active travel, and we just need to keep on making that better and better and better. And I'm pleased to see some of the improvements in terms of cycling infrastructure. But can't be the only solution. I hate to sound like a broken record here, but it is about electrification again, which goes back to my earlier points. I won't repeat them, but that is going to be key to getting electric vehicles to be operating, electric buses. I've always argued that we needed a better bus system in Cambridge. I'm afraid it's stuck at the moment on that basic question of finding ways of getting the road space. And that may be something we have to grapple with again. Could we go for underground, light rail, and all the rest of it? Hugely expensive and not very quick to deliver, I'm afraid. So the quicker solutions are encouraging more and more people to take the active travel solution and actually having a public transport system that works for everybody. But I say that's not been proven that easy to deliver in this city so far.
Okay, so green politics is about fair green solutions that make life better. And we've been suggesting credible and sensible solutions to our public transport problem for years now, which is the main barrier for getting people out of cars. They just can't see that the public transport is there for them. You try waiting for a bus, it's a labour of love in Cambridge. We're still not there, we've got a long way to go, and it's just buses, like, come on. In terms of cycling as well, I mean, a lot of people won't even cycle in Cambridge because they find it too dangerous. There's a real lack of designated cycle paths. I live in Coleridge. We've been waiting since 2019 for just a designated cycle path all the way up Cherry Hinton Road. I mean, I feel like I'm dicing with death there sometimes in doing the school run. So we need those desperately now. Those can be easily done. Just get, surely it can't be that hard to find funding just to put some paint on the road. In terms of funding sources, just to go back to funding a bus system that's fully electric, very frequent, cheap, reliable, things we expect now in 2024. The funding sources must be found that will not cause financial hardship. The £5 or £10 daily charge that was proposed, it would have caused even greater financial inequality. And we've been proposing alternative solutions to the funding problem for years now. The workplace parking levy, we've come up with a tourist tax. We're glad to see that there's a mayoral precept now for tax to get the funding for the buses. So yeah, in the meantime, we're still waiting, aren't we? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Sarah. For me, I think there's three things. And firstly, I do agree that the future looks towards light rail, but I do also note that the Conservative Mayor for the Combined Authority, where this would sit, spent 5 years failing to provide any kind of hope of funding for it. So I think the role of an MP in that is to make the argument that actually, if Cambridge is going to become the centre of the UK and the UK's next Silicon Valley or whatever other kind of fresh hell Michael Gove has planned for us, part of that deal has to be that they stump up the proper funds needed for a rapid transport system, because without it, we simply cannot sustain that level of growth because we cannot get people into the jobs that they need to do. So I do agree with you that that is the future, but perhaps not in quite the same way. I think secondly, a key part of this will be for the future, will be around the bus routes. And currently a big problem with our bus service is they sit within the grip of Stagecoach, who are rubbish. And you can wait hours and hours for a bus that doesn't come. And then all they do is take off the routes and you're absolutely stuck. So I think one of the key steps that we need to take, and I know the County Council are looking at how you might go about doing this, is a franchise bus system that could come within the local authority control. So we're not forced to run bus routes as Stagecoach are just for profits. It could be there are some smaller routes on little buses that go to places people need to go that maybe make a loss, because there'll be others sustaining that. So we could be a bit more flexible. So I think those smaller buses, which should move towards being electric on routes where you need to be. And also we need to win the argument that actually it is possible to conduct your life on the buses. And for me, one of the reasons why the arguments around the congestion charge simply didn't work for people was because we hadn't won the argument first that you could live your life on a bus. You can get from A to B. We need to reduce the fares, make sure they run regularly to prove to people they can make that modal shift before we introduce the stick of the charge. And finally, really quickly, the other part is some of the simple things, the cycleways, the potholes. A number of my residents in Castle who say, I did used to cycle, but I fell off and broke my nose and now there's no chance ever again. Lighting, for instance, on the footways. And also I think for the police, putting cycle theft as a priority, particularly around the train stations, which is one of the key reasons people don't do it. So that's my 3 points.
Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Susan, for the question. To be honest, there's a few points here I would like to say is number one, do you think our infrastructure for cycling is safe? This is our roads. One picture just, I can make hundreds, but I don't have the budget. Because really it's not safe. People who's doing scooters as well, do you think it's safe? People running in the nights, in the evening, freezing weather, do you think it's safe? It's not safe. This is dangerous. Our city became dangerous to use for cycling community, for scooters, to go around. We have more fractures than ever. Now, number one. Number two, I'm the only candidate here talking about blue energy. Do you think green energy is safe? No. Green energy, we are destroying countries to get the lithium from there. They're starving now. They have farms problem. We have disaster. And then I spoke to a few experts about lithium. What do we do with the lithium? We have thousands, millions of cars, buses, and guess what? We don't know. We can't recycle it. So what we do, we don't know. We are waiting for a disaster from lithium. Number one, so more cancer here, we're talking more diseases from lithium. We are going to face disaster in the future because of lithium. Lots of lithium here and there. Number three here, we have to divert to something called blue energy, liquid hydrogen. Liquid hydrogen, believe it or not, we have a very big factor here producing the machines which making the liquid hydrogen. But guess what? What we are doing, we sell it to Spain, to Belgium, to Germany. They are doing very well with the liquid hydrogen. The end cycle of the liquid hydrogen is what? Water and hydrogen. It's very eco. So we need eco transport, eco buses. Now, some airlines, they change their airlines or planes to liquid hydrogen. So, and some buses as well in Europe. So why we are behind Europe? We have to switch to more eco, to more green. Lithium is not the only green, which I question the lithium. So please, we have to change now before the disaster. And we have to help the community. Thank you, Mia. I will stop for now, but I hope the message, you got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Sarah, can I ask you again to just respond? Do you feel that your question was answered by the panel? Is there anything missing that you were hoping for?
Thank you. I do feel I've heard lots of different ideas of how to solve the problem, but very little about how to fund them. And maybe that requires a bit more thought.
Yeah, it's a big, I was thinking that too. All right, so if I can take another question from the floor. Can I take that young man right in the blue right there? Please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hello, I am Callum and I'm currently in year 10. My question is, the UN General Secretary says something like new fossil fuel projects is madness. I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but they said something like that. So are people here going to follow that advice or are they going to ignore it?
Okay, that's a very succinct question. I like it. Daniel, can we start with you this time?
Yes, he's right. And that's why we won't be allowing new gas licenses in the North Sea. But what we do recognise is there's got to be a proper transition. So this is about, of course, it's urgent, but you can't just make that transition just because you want to immediately. It's got to be done in a properly phased way. But it would be ridiculous to be going further with fossil fuels. And it's extraordinarily disappointing. The current government doesn't seem to understand that. So I'm sorry to keep going around the same points time and time again, but that electrification, that decarbonisation of the grid is absolutely essential. I will just pick up on the previous point there around the possibilities around green hydrogen. I do think there are real possibilities. It's controversial. Some people still think it's hard to feed green hydrogen into the gas systems, and the two pilot projects the government was doing have been dropped. But when you look at it, it still feels to me, particularly when you've got the offshore capabilities off the East Coast, there is real possibilities if we can find ways of making it safe and efficient. And I would echo some of the points about some of the green transport. I've seen some of the green buses, the hydrogen powered buses, and that could be a way forward as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Just before I answer the question directly, I was surprised by what Daniel just said about not supporting the renewing licenses, because I'm pretty sure the deputy leader of the Labour Party said on ITV just last week that they do indeed support renewing licenses in the North Sea oil. So no new licenses. Okay, I'm pretty sure Angela Rayner said the opposite. Pardon? So it sounds like the Labour Party aren't particularly aligned on that question, but the Conservative Party are. And look, I get the sentiment that we don't want to be using fossil fuels because we want to get to renewable energy, but we also have to be practical and recognise where we are. We still need oil and gas. We want to get to having completely sustainable energy as quickly as we can. Of course we do. But when the sun doesn't shine and when the wind doesn't blow, that's when we have blackouts. So we need to have oil and gas right now for a lot of things, but as we go through the medium term as a backup. And also we have to acknowledge that the thousands of jobs that would be lost if we were to just switch that off tomorrow, that is a consideration we have to bear in mind. We might want to do it, it might sound good, but we need to recognize that thousands of jobs are on the line with that, and there isn't a go-to location just yet. So look, like I say, the sentiment is fair and I don't disagree with it. We need to move away from fossil fuels as quickly as we can, but that doesn't mean tomorrow. We don't live in the paradise land that we want to be in just yet. So we need to recognize where we are. But as I say, it's a top priority to move away from them as soon as we can.
Thank you so much for your question. I think it's a really, really good one. I think it was Antonio Gutierrez, and he said we're heading to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. And yeah, the climate change is a defining issue of our time, without a doubt. And I think most people in this room agree with that. That's why the Green Party is the only party to come out and say we're going to stop we'll will put the pressure on government to stop all fossil fuel extraction projects and also cancel recently issued fossil fuel licenses, including Rosebank. It won't happen overnight, of course. Like we're not idiots. But it's a transition. It is idiotic to think it's a transition that hasn't to be started with extreme urgency. That's the silliness. So we really need to get on with it. These policies about stopping fossil fuel licenses and cancelling recently issued fossil fuel licenses, including Rosebank, are not radical. The current situation is radical. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Now we have 2 points here. Fossil fuel, not cost effective, to be honest. It's very expensive to dig it and get it out. Number 2, it's really causing disaster to our climate. We have to stop. We got alternative. Don't tell me we don't have alternative. There is lots of areas we can get cheaper and more clean energy and gas and oil. But what's going on? They are delaying this. They're trying to make more business deals here and there. So we have to stop now. When we are going to stop? When we sink? When we are going to stop? When we have more cancer, more people dying from pollution and lung diseases? When? We have to act now. They are just lazy, I have to be honest, or there is more benefit than what we think. So let's act now, stop it now, and stop wasting our country and health as well. I agree completely with you. We should stop the fossil fuel. We should be more green, more eco, more blue as well. Think about the blue energy today. Thank you very much.
A couple of years ago, the Ukraine-Russian war began, and gas prices in this country went through the roof. I'm sure that many of you may be aware that it was just another painful financial issue to deal with for a lot of families in this country. And one of the reasons for this is that we didn't have enough energy security, pardon me. There is a need to balance the desire for change versus what people need, the need for the present. So any transition, as some of my colleagues here have mentioned, should be gradual. It's very nice and bombastic to say we should cease this because it's not good. But the fact is, sometimes not good is necessary. And so a slow and gradual transition, for sure, if there's a cleaner energy out there, it would be great, right? But today, you can't have it, because if you try to have it, you get a disaster.
Thank you. I think I agree with the UN, and probably you also, that to continue with fossil fuels is absolutely madness. And I think, of course, we need to follow that guidance. The question is how, and I do take Sarah's point from earlier that it's important as well to talk about how you would fund these things, because the level of investment that you would need to make that transition to renewables as quickly as we need to do by 2040, 2050, if not sooner, is absolutely huge. Something the Liberal Democrats are the first party to propose, but I believe others have supported, was a windfall tax, which would be a tax on the profits generated by the fossil fuel companies. So it's think about Shell and BP, that would then be put back directly into renewable energy projects. And that's something where actually I'm very proud of our party's history within that. If we look at the wind farm in Sheringham that you might be aware of, that was something that was funded through such projects by the Liberal Democrats as part of the coalition. There are other not good things about the coalition, but the wind farm was a really nice one. We'd also proposing putting forward a net zero delivery authority, which would strengthen the powers of local authorities to cut emissions in their areas and promote community energy. And as part of that would include requiring new homes to be fitted with solar panels right from the start. So we're not in that position of having to go back to retrofit. We'd also look at a tax on private jets so that the owners of those then have to pay that funding again directly back into funding those projects. So we're trying to put the strain of paying for it with the biggest polluters, and therefore the people who should be putting that back. So I completely agree. It's a difficult transition, but I think there are ways to fund that by taking the money from the places which are actually doing the most damage.
All right, we'll take one more audience one and then we'll go to one of the ones that were done before.
The carbon cost of demolishing the old site was pouring millions of tons of concrete on a principal chalk aquifer, of pumping sewage uphill to Honey Hill, etc., is immeasurable and as yet unquantified. Homes England has recently awarded Anglian Water an extra 50 million on top of the 227 million already granted. Proof, as if it was needed, that funding issues exist and costs are already spiraling. If climate change should be at the heart of planning and new developments, can the panel agree that moving a fully functioning sewage works with capacity for the growing population of Cambridge to a principal chalk aquifer on Greenbelt in order to create a brownfield site is a bonkers idea of the highest order?
Right. Sarah, would you like to start us off?
Hello, and thank you for coming along and saying your question so vociferously. It's very good. The Green Party have consistently supported, opposed the moving of the sewage plant to Honey Hill. I think we're the only party to oppose it, and we've been saying so in consultations all across over the years. So this has been a long project. It's absolutely bonkers to be building on a chalk aquifer when our chalk aquifers are so threatened and our water supply depends on them. So I think it's absolutely crazy. And I think that your campaign is absolutely brilliant. I wholeheartedly support it. And I hope everybody tonight helps with this campaign. Thank you.
David, you want to go ahead and tell me that?
Exactly what she said.
Okay, that was very succinct. Jamie, why don't you go next?
You really, really do. My question would be, if not to Honey Hill, then to where? Because for me, my question then would be that how do we make that argument to those thousands of homes that could be created?
Of commercial research and development space. It's not about the housing, and we know it.
I would argue it's absolutely about building homes. Cambridge has an ambitious local plan for house building, which it needs to have. I'm happy to not answer if I'm not.
Can I also just remind everyone to do kind of respectful listening as well? You know, we are, candidates are here to give their answers. So let's let them go. Cheney, would you like to?
Thank you. I'm happy to answer if I can speak. I'm happy to talk to you afterwards as well. But the North East Cambridge site is a key part of the local plan, which does have an ambitious house building strategy. And unfortunately, and I think this is one of those uncomfortable arguments, I said earlier on that some of the issues that we have to face in the future will not be crowd pleasers, and providing homes for young people, for the key workers we need to keep the city moving, for the students I'm teaching, for our NHS workers is essential. Otherwise, in 50 years' time, we'll be in a city where we simply don't have the public sector there to support the people living in it, with an ageing population and no public services. The North East Cambridge site is a key part of that plan. It's a brownfield site. It's a place to link thousands of homes. It also, I'm happy to stop if you're not prepared to let me speak.
That's your answer. It is important to actually, once you've asked your question, which you did just insert in, to actually let them. Thank you.
Thank you. And also within those proposals are bus links, cycle links, schools and surgeries. The position it's at the moment, from what I understand, is that the movement is now being reviewed by an independent inspector. because it's judged that effectively as the council as a planning authority for this, it's not right for it to mark its own homework. It's not right for it to review the decisions made within its own local plan. So that now decision is now sitting independently about where the place for the sewage works would need to be. It does need to move in order for the housing to happen. The Liberal Democrats within this, we've launched a long campaign to try and improve the ratio of open space. That's both informal space, so open fields, but also formal space, so things like football pitches and sports areas and shared gardens, to try and reduce that. And we've been successful. And that's what we've had to really push, I would say, the Labour administration in the city, who wanted to reduce that to beneath the local plan levels. So it's uncomfortable. I really do get your anger, honestly. But for me, building those homes and providing the future where Cambridge can continue to grow, because Cambridge is a lovely place to be, is really important too. Thank you. Jane, you want to go next?
Thank you. I mean, what did I say at the start? They don't listen to your views. They don't care about your priorities, and they completely ignore it and do what they want to do regardless. I couldn't agree more with what you said. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's disgusting, frankly.
Hello.
I'm completely with you, to be honest. I cannot believe what's going on there. Number one. Number two, we have green built area, and it's now is gone. We are destroying, over-expanding the city, and we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough GP surgeries, we don't have enough security for the city, we don't have enough water supply even for the new build. This is unacceptable. We have to stand with the people. We have to stand with our green area, green belt. We cannot just throw our sewage here and there. This morning, when I bought this newspaper, I was reading villagers find used toilet roll in field with sewage bubbling up. It's horrible. What's going on around? So Cambridge is not Cambridge anymore. Expanding, destroying the green area, not acceptable. We have to stop, review everything, and keep the city very green, very eco, safe for everyone. I'm anti over-expanding when we don't have facility to clean the city from inside. The city from inside is disaster. We are just, I'm going around, I feel sorry. 10 years, it's getting every day, every year, worse and worse. And we are expanding, and throwing our sewage to our neighbors. I'm really sorry for your feeling. I'm standing with you completely. I'm anti this disaster. I can't accept this anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Cheney gave a very good answer in my view and explained part of the problem. I've been very struck by the canvassing we've been doing, the number of young people who have said to me, you've got to do something about the housing crisis, because not only can people not hope to buy in this city, they can't even afford to rent. So there's an intergenerational fairness issue here. The young people are having a really, really tough time, and that will require more housing. And anyone who's had a tour of the current sewage site, I did on Christmas Eve, amazingly enough, a few years ago, would be staggered to see the huge amount of space that's wasted there at the moment. So I have to say, it seems to me, I understand absolutely why people don't want it to happen, but we need those homes, absolutely essential, and that's why I very much back the moves that the council has made. And it will help so many people, and that's got to be done.
Thank you. David. Oh, did you go already? No.
But I'd just like to ask, why does it have to be done, Daniel?
Because this is a crowded city. I say, I just suggest to people they go and actually have a look, obviously with permission. But it is a huge amount of space. And it is a sensible approach. We have a planning system. That's why the councils do what they do, to try and find ways of resolving these issues. I quite get that people don't ever want anything to change. But frankly, for those of us, and there's plenty of people in this audience who are older, you want people to look after you in the future. You need young people to live here and work here. We're going to need the housing. It's got to go somewhere. And that's actually a very rational place to put some of it.
Maybe that.
Can you answer this gentleman?
Yeah, well, Cheney's probably in a better position to answer than I am, because she's a councillor who's actually involved. But my understanding is it's many, many thousands of homes.
It's 14,000 jobs. It's going to make the housing situation far more.
5,600 homes would be very welcome to many, many people who are really struggling in this city.
Crowd the city out, it will actually put an incredible burden on city services. And it's the big lie of this campaign is that growth is about houses. It's not about housing. Green workers, they're being sold out. I mean, I'm just trying to contribute to the debate.
Did you have a question that was a follow-up here? Yes.
Thank you. I'm Naomi Bennett. I am a Green Party councillor. I sit on planning. I also sit on the Strategy and Resources Committee. So here are a few facts. The Milton Sewage Works is actually our only local sewage works which is up to modern standard. It was modernised at taxpayer expense in 2014 and is supposedly future-proofed until 2050. Speakers who have said that there would be 5,630 houses on homes on the new site are correct. Now, the City Planning Service uses a metric of 1.7 jobs that can be satisfied per home. So my mental arithmetic is not great. I reckon that's about 8,000 to 9,000 jobs. We were talking about 14,000 jobs being created on the North Cambridge site. So, and unfortunately, it's likely that's going to have to go up because of the financial strain. So actually, rather than solving our homes crisis, we're actually going to be overheating our housing economy. And I'd like to ask Daniel Zeichner and Cheney Payne to look at the work done in Broken Cities by the Labour academician, Professor Deborah Potts of King's College, where she sets out this study beautifully. Thank you very much for putting up with me.
Thank you. Clearly, so many of the issues are around growth and kind of Cambridge also as a proposed centre for an enormous amount of growth. So, these issues both are enormously local as well as broader issues. Right, we are.
But it should be discussed. This is one of the major issues.
Yeah, of course.
Why don't we answer?
Well, we have been.
I mean, there is an issue with this mantra that we have to add enormous amounts of housing to Cambridge. I ask why?
Yeah.
What benefit to the people?
We have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to take one more question while we can. And can I ask the man in the check shirt there to ask a question and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Cameron. I work as a carpenter in the city. I also campaign with Insulate Britain and Just Stop Oil. As we're all hearing, insulation really good. I have a criminal record for asking for it when we were needing this decades ago and it hasn't been done. I just wanted to know, really, cornerstone of democracy being protest has been eroded over the last few years by the Conservative Party in this country. And people like myself and many others, I'm sure, in this room have been demonized in the media, and the media is also, unfortunately, full of Conservative MPs in some stations. So my question is, how do you feel about people like me and other normal people who are trying to use the form of protest to change things? And now you've got groups like Just Stop Oil who've been saying we need to get off fossil fuel licenses. And in 10, 20 years' time, we will look back, as we do with the suffragettes and these other movements, and we look back to say, oh, they were right. I wish we hadn't criminalized them. But with the climate crisis, we won't get hindsight. So I just want to know what you think and feel about people like me, activists. That's my question.
Thank you for your question. I can't help but think that was directed somewhat at me. So look, the right to protest is a massive right in this country that we have to protect and uphold at all costs. But there is a clear distinction between the right to protest and the right for people to go about their daily lives. Look, Cameron, you acknowledged in the first sentence that you have a criminal record for your activity. So
I was arrested in Parliament Square also.
So I think as well, it's quite disingenuous to compare some of the actions, not necessarily you, but your organisation do with the suffragettes, right? So protesting and committing criminal damage, throwing paint on people during their weddings is So the answer to the question directly, of course, the right to protest is important, but committing criminal offences is never an okay form of protest.
I think you're bloody brilliant. Thank you. I think for me, the right to protest and peaceful protest, of course, is one of the fundamental bedrocks of our society. I'm a liberal Democrat. Liberal means freedom. And so we fundamentally believe in individual liberty. And the Liberal Democrats exist to build and safeguard a fair, free and open society. And the role of protest in that is absolutely critical. And often it is those protests. It is the people who are working 10, 15 years behind the politicians and behind the legislation change that win the public will and that move hearts and minds. So for me, that right to protest should absolutely be held up to be sacrosanct and should be protected. I think there's an argument around making sure that it's done in the right place. And protesting in Parliament Square, for instance, is exactly where the right to protest should be allowed to happen, because there it's not affecting the public, it's not causing problems, but it is putting it right in front of the politicians who should be hearing that. So I absolutely support the right to protest and thank you for what you're doing.
The right to protest is fundamental, but can you tell me in what way you protest and why you've been arrested before I answer you?
Sure. So I have been on the roads because the streets is where people have always gone to voice their desires for change. And so when we are ignored or put in the protest pen outside Houses of Parliament, where they're allowing now the protests to happen, we are so ignored. And we are doing it because we're desperate. We have been ignored.
What are you doing?
So I glued myself to the M25. That's how desperate for insulation I am, mate.
Yeah, that sounds quite cool.
Yeah, it's serious.
So not just for him, for others as well. Yeah, that's the other thing, but I presume that
Okay, how do you answer that? How do you answer that?
To join Insulate Britain or Just Stop Oil, you have to go to a non-violence direct action training day so that we make sure everyone knows how to stay calm in the face of what is a heightened situation. And we always remain non-violent. You wouldn't believe the amount of planning and things that go into these actions to make sure that the public is safe, that we have a blue lights policy to ensure that ambulances can still get through in a lane that isn't glued. We're not idiots that wake up that morning and go, let's go to the M25.
Fair enough. But wait, let's hear this gentleman. You're arguing that there's an issue.
What's it done? That in actual fact. Please use the microphone.
What Just Oil have done is lost the public support. I need to get to work and I've been stopped from getting from A to B because somebody's glued themselves. That doctor needs to get to the hospital to treat his patients. It hasn't happened. There's a place for everything. And when you take on protest. I actually believe protest is a right. However, it needs to be done responsibly.
So it looks like there's a balance, right? There's a balance between what you're doing and there's a balance between the effect on the people.
But I'm not a political party. Just Stop Oil is not a political party. We and Extinction Rebellion have perhaps pushed the agenda of the climate crisis way further ahead than it would have been today had those groups not disrupted roads. And it's the job of the politicians now to be the ones that we like. I don't care if people like me or not, okay?
Why
I'm
don't
here
you
to
do
get
it in a
fossil
way?
fuel licenses.
Why don't you
at
do
the
it in a way that
agenda.
attracts other people? If this way you would surely win the argument.
Okay, I'm sorry that you got late, well, you arrived late at work, but we've just passed the limit for global warming, 1.5 degrees for over a year now. Okay, Cambridge is going to be flanked by water in less than a decade. So there's other issues at stake, okay? If any of you have children, you need to be thinking about this. Life is going to get very complicated, very complicated. And I am thankful to any activists that get in the way because the government is not doing it. The Labour Party is not doing it. The Liberal Democrats are not doing it. You are still going to be, you're not going to cancel Rosebank. That's what needs to happen. Okay, I beg to differ. But yeah, I'm really, really proud to know many activists in this room. When I introduced Leonard to Cameron, when he was 4 years old, I said, this is a hero right here. This is someone you're going to be thanking as you get older. Okay, because things are going to get very complicated. I'm just so grateful. I think the right to protest is fundamental, as David said. David.
Have responsibility towards people who want to live their lives. You have to balance your rights against others.
But I think, yeah, I think that we need to protect the right to protest. We absolutely do. Otherwise, becoming an authoritarian state, and that's really, really dangerous. So we need to be very, very careful about that. Yes, XR, amazing. Amazing. I was part of Changing Conversations, which we ran with Tony and a few other people in the room. And we felt, it was like I just had a baby at that time, so I couldn't really get totally involved in XR, but I was full of admiration about the level of organization and detail that went into the action that XR and now JSO and now Insulate Britain are doing. So keep going, and I'll finish there. If you want to talk more later, let's do it.
Of course, it's absolutely essential that the right to peaceful protest is protected, but I absolutely agree with what Abdul Amin has been saying, that we also have to respect the rights of people to go about their business. And the really important thing here is don't lose the support of the public. When I warned earlier about what's happening across Europe at the moment, it's not going the way in which most of us would like to see in this room. And the danger is that we lose public support. So do it in the right kind of way, absolutely. But the great thing is, this is an election period. You got the chance to vote for a party that's going to decarbonize the power system by 2030. That's exactly what you want alongside the insulation schemes. So whether it's your protest or not, we're going to do it. And I hope you'll support us in that.
Thank you very much. I'm always standing with the protest because it's the only way sometimes we can change. And myself, I was supporting the protest to cease the fire and stop the genocide in the Holy Land. Now, I would like to be the first MB to stand and protest with you, but in a safe way. Because I used to do the M25 going down to Royal Marsden Hospital to do my training over there as an oncology consultant. And really, I used to drive from 5 a.m. going down to Royal Marsden to start the MDT at 7 a.m. So if there is any problem with the way, I will struggle to attend. My training will stop. And now I'm consultant after all of these years. So really, there's lots of families needs really, the M25 and businesses and people. So let's do it in a safe way, like how we do it to stop the genocide and stop the I will be the first one standing with you, protesting with you, together in a safe way for our community, for our future. Yes, we are facing disaster. And if we stop protesting, if we stop doing this, they are doing nothing. Just they are talking too much and nothing. You can see all of us suffering. For how long? 2050. Thank you very much.
Now, we are at the end of our time, and I know some people have to leave.
More CO2 than the whole of the Central African Republic in the whole of 2022. There can be no climate justice about global justice about global peace. What are you doing to end global humanity and crisis? What are you doing to end war crime that becomes more CO2 than the whole of the Central African Republic did in the whole of 2022?
Right. Important questions, but we're not going to be able to get to them tonight. But I think actually Cameron's question was a great one to end on. It's a really kind of important issue, and it is a broad issue that covers so much. Can I ask a quick question? Has anyone who didn't know what they were voting coming in have a better sense of what they'll be voting? Good. Well, excellent. Well, this is important part of what the evening's about. I want to thank all of you very much for putting yourselves on the line. It's not an easy thing to do. Really appreciate it. And using my thing here, I also want to thank all of you to come in tonight. You know, this is what makes it. Thank you. It's lovely to see lots of younger people as well as middle-aged and older people, and wonderful to have all of you here. So thank you for a very fabulous Hustings. Thank you.